Yesterday we lost a legend. Stan Lee passed away at age 95, leaving behind a legacy that has inspired millions and millions of fans across the globe. Aside from his work at Marvel Comics, Stan made sure to appear in the adaptations of the comic giant's greatest works, having made cameos in almost all of the Marvel live-action films, and even some of the animated ones in video games too. Luckily for us, Stan thought ahead. Before he passed away, he made sure to film cameos for 5 more Marvel Cinematic Universe films, including Avengers 4 and Captain Marvel, so we won't be without one of our favorite Easter eggs that fans adore in the franchise. So today, in honor of Stan, we're counting down our top 10 favorite Stan Lee cameos. Let's get to it. Starting us off in at number 10, Hulk. Lee started doing cameos in Marvel adaptations with an appearance in the television show The Incredible Hulk back in the 80s that starred Lou Ferrigno. So when the 2003 Hulk film came out, director Ang Lee figured he'd capitalize on that history, and pop Stan Lee and Ferrigno in a quick scene together. Stan plays a security guard who's exiting a building with a much more jacked up security guard, played by Lou Ferrigno. It's a quick moment, but you can hear Lee ranting to him saying, "As far as I'm concerned, security would be beefed up a lot more in a place like this." Moving on to number 9, Deadpool. While Stan didn't make a live-action cameo in the sequel Deadpool movie, he only appears as graffiti on a building, he did make a pretty hilarious one in the first film. Deadpool, which was Marvel's first R-rated film, placed Lee as a DJ in a strip club. Lee even has a hilarious line shouting into a microphone saying, "Give it up for Chastity," who's one of the dancers in the club.
Give it up for Chastity!
Of course her name is Chastity. Unexpected, ridiculous, and so enjoyable, it's become a fan favorite cameo for Marvel and moviegoer fans alike. And at number 8, Captain America Civil War. At the end of Civil War, as Tony Stark and Rhodey have a moment of reflection, Stan pops up as a FedEx delivery man in search of Stark. He's got a package from Steve Rogers. He knocks on the window and declares that he's got a package for a Tony Stank. Rhodey gets one hell of a kick out of this, responding, "Yes, this is Tony Stank, you're in the right place," and that he'll never let Tony live that one down.
Thank you for that. Never dropping that, by the way.
It's a brief moment, but oh so enjoyable. In our number 7 spot, Captain America, the Winter Soldier. "Oh man, I am so fired." That's the hilarious line that Stan utters in Winter Soldier, playing a security guard at the Smithsonian, who has just realized that Captain America's uniform, which was on display at the museum, has been stolen. Little does he know that it was Cap who was behind the thievery, taking it so that he can go take down Hydra after discovering that they've infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D. Moving on to number 6, the Spider-Man video games. While Stan's cameo in the movies have always been enjoyable, his cameos in some of the Marvel video games can be even more satisfying at times, particularly this one.
Don't try this at home, kids!
In the Amazing Spider-Man game that came out in 2012 for PS3, Xbox 360, and the Wii U, there was a mode in the game that allowed you to play as Stan Lee, with all of Spidey's powers. It was a DLC, and it was amazing. You could swing around the city as Stan in a full-blown business suit, and he had a ton of lines that he'd say while he was doing it, including the likes of, "I'm definitely gonna tweet about this," and "I really am hero material," just to name a few. He also recently appeared in the new PS4 Spider-Man game as well, as the owner of a restaurant that Peter Parker and Mary Jane frequent. Up next, number 5, Thor Ragnarok. In one of Lee's more adorable cameos, here we have him in Thor's third movie, Ragnarok. After Thor is picked up on Sakaar and captured by the Grandmaster's goons, he's strapped to a chair as part of preparation to turn him into one of the Grandmaster's gladiators, which means a haircut for Thor. And who's the barber in charge of chopping off all of the Asgardians' golden locks? Stan Lee. Plus his haircutting tool is absolutely terrifying, as you can also see based on Thor's reaction. According to director Taika Waititi, he wanted Lee's appearance to be both a funny cameo and a disarming reminder about the ravages of time, cause Lee's like, "My hands aren't as steady as they used to be." See why Thor was scared. Moving on to number 4, Avengers Age of Ultron. In Age of Ultron, one of the fan favorite scenes features a party in which all of the Avengers are in attendance. Now by the end of the night, everyone has gotten their drink on, including one of the World War II veterans in attendance, who is played by none other than Stan Lee. After Thor teases him about Odin booze and how it's too strong for mortals, Lee responds saying, "Neither was Omaha Beach, Blondie. Stop trying to scare us."
Stop trying to scare us. Come on.
Alright.
Later on, we see him being gently escorted out of the party, quite drunk, saying his famous catchphrase,
Excelsior.
Moving on to number 3, Spider-Man 3. Often, Lee's cameos aren't just for humor. Sometimes he comes as a means of a moral reminder to our heroes on screen. This is the case in 2007's Spider-Man 3. While the movie itself was questionable at best, Lee's cameo resonated with a lot of people, and has become one of his more quotable lines since. He turns to Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker and says, "You know, I guess one person can make a difference. Enough said." and then walks away. It also really affects Parker, and sums up much of the comic book character's own personal conflict that he's struggled with over the years, thanks to some excellent writing courtesy of Lee himself. Speaking of Spider-Man, up next at number 2, The Amazing Spider-Man. One of the most complicated shots that Stan has cameoed in comes from The Amazing Spider-Man, the film that starred Andrew Garfield as Peter Parker prior to the Spider-Man MCU revamp. This one has Stan standing in the foreground of one of the movie's major fight scenes, with headphones on his ears, completely oblivious to what's going on behind him in the library. It's a whole lot of wreckage. We hear the classical music that he's listening to as he almost gets knocked out by a table that Spidey pulls back with one of his webs. Stan then picks up a brown paper bag and heads out of the library just as Spider-Man is thrown past him by the door and crashes into some bookcases. And finally, in at number 1, The Watcher from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. In Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, there's a moment where Yondu, Rocket, and Groot are flung through the galaxy in a pretty hilarious sequence. During the sequence, director James Gunn cuts to a quick moment of calmness as their ship swoops by a barren planet and interrupts an important conversation. On that planet, we see a group of Watchers, all sitting around Stan Lee in an astronaut suit. Stan says, "Aw man. Anyway, before I was so rudely interrupted, that time I was a Federal Express man." This spawned one of the biggest MCU fan theories out there, that Stan Lee is actually a Watcher, more specifically, the one sanctioned to this quadrant of the galaxy, ULTRON the Watcher, meaning that in all of his cameos in the MCU, he's there as a Watcher taking it in, and that the Federal Express man line is a nod to his cameo in Captain America Civil War, where he shows up as a FedEx delivery guy and says Tony Stank. But similar to ULTRON, who is known for sometimes meddling in small ways, Lee often interjects and interacts ever so briefly with our heroes on screen. Marvel Studios has even nodded at the theory, saying that Lee exists, I quote, "above and apart from the reality of all the films." And that he does. Alright, there we have it friends. Which was your favorite Stan Lee cameo? What other ones should we have included on our list? And what was your favorite Stan Lee moment in general? Tell us what he meant to you in those comments below. In the meantime though, thanks for watching everybody. Hope to catch you all in the next one.